Hi, everybody. My name is Jared Milrad. I'm the founder and president of Movie Karma. We're the nonprofit organization here in the United States that created our podcast, Rewriting Hollywood, which I'm sure as many of you know is focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, and social impact in Hollywood, really looking at the power of storytelling and how it can be a force for good and for social change all around the world. And today I'm really excited to have a global guest joining us all the way from Singapore, a couple guests rather, for their latest documentary called Lady. Lady is an award-winning documentary, again, coming to us from Singapore, that really highlights the role of caregivers in our society, looking at issues around dementia, mental health, physical health, and just the impacts that these issues can have on families, on caregivers, and on each of us. It's a really powerful documentary, again, called Lady. We celebrated it and recognized it as part of our Show for Change Film Festival. And today I'm really excited to be joined by two of the filmmakers really involved in this project, a director and a producer. We're joined by Ming, who directed Lady, as well as a producer, Ming. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for being part of our film festival. So to start off, to both of you, Ming, Ming, let's talk about the really just the background that both of you bring to this story as creators, as filmmakers, director, producer. Tell us a little bit, if you would, about what inspired you to make this project, but also just if you would tell us a little bit about your backgrounds as filmmakers. Maybe I'll start with you, with Ming.
Yeah, maybe I can share a little bit about my background. So I came from broadcast television, where I used to make a lot of like TV documentaries for channels like, National Geographic, Discovery Channel, and like Singapore's like local news outfit, Channel News Asia. And then so I did that for 5.5 years, and then I was like pretty jaded, and I was like, okay, I need to do something that fills my soul.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined a non-profit digital storytelling platform called Our Better World. So we basically work with a lot of like different non-profits or other NGOs, and we make like short documentaries for them. And we put it out there, and there's always like a call to action for their cause. So I've been there for about 2.5 years, and so Lady is kind of like a side like passion project that I've been working on with the team along the side. Yeah.
Okay, some background about the three of us. So me and Pei are actually like university friends, so we go way back, and it's really cool. And Kelly is actually my ex-colleague from. So back then I was working at a local news paper in Singapore, covering a range of social issues and other related issues. So that was my full-time job. And I was doing a lot of that. After that, I went to freelancing for the last 3 years. So I actually write for a number of regional, international publications, but close to my heart, what's close to my heart is a lot of social issues. So actually, I actually got to know of this kind of like lady, Siti, who's the protagonist in the film, when I was kind of like just starting out my freelancing. It came to me through an assignment with this philanthropic organization that I got to know through my journalism days, and I was kind of really struck by Siti and her love for her husband Gary. So for me, it was a love story above it all, and I think I was just very moved by what I saw, how she, how she did caregiving for him, and it was kind of relentless on her part. And somehow I got the idea like, hey, let's like kind of do a story. I thought it was worth telling this story because young onset dementia is not really heard about in Singapore specifically. And actually, funnily enough, I kind of didn't want to do a documentary at first. So it started from what I was familiar with, print and writing, and it evolved to a photo story. And then finally I decided like maybe a documentary would kind of tell her story best, and that's how I kind of like approach my friends. So Kelly and Palin did not know each other like personally, but they somehow met like by fate in New York, like a random Singapore event. So I think they got to know each other. I was like, okay, let's bring these two together, because Kelly also has experience doing film. She was studying at Columbia University, and she was doing masters in documentary. Yeah, so she actually produced a film as well. So I thought these two people have like the best expertise, and like let's combine our strengths of these like three powerful ladies together, and let's do something. Yeah,
that's really neat. So you kind of combine forces, and as you said, maybe met by fate to do it. I wanted to ask you about the topics in this film, as you alluded to, Ming, because my father actually had dementia, passed away from dementia. A lot of families are impacted by dementia. In his case, he was in his 80s when he was diagnosed. But as you said, this is not just a disease that really affects older people; it also affects younger people. I understand that this is an issue on the rise in Singapore and perhaps other parts of the world, where younger people are being diagnosed as early as folks in their late 30s, 40s, even 50s with dementia. And so I'll throw it over to Pei Ling. Tell us a little bit more, building on what Yiming just said, about why dementia was an important topic that you think that you wanted to highlight, and why this particular story resonated with you, Pei Ling.
Yeah, so I think when Yiming approached me and told me about this story, and she mentioned like young onset dementia, I was like, what's that? Like, I didn't even know what it was. I mean, I've heard about dementia and how like it only affects like elderly, but when she told me about Gary, who was in his 50s and already experiencing very late stage signs,
Right.
of dementia, I was like, whoa, this is quite like something else. I've never heard of it, and it's not been highlighted. It's not usually been highlighted in like families where like kids are still studying and their dad or their mom is already like showing signs of dementia. So I think what drew me to the story was actually what Yiming said, like it's a love story, and through that love we witness this amazing like feat of caregiving. And I saw there were two layers to this story. Firstly, obviously, it's about young onset dementia and caregiving, but the second layer was we didn't want to glorify this sacrificial act of caregiving. Like sometimes, especially in the Asian context, people are kind of taught to like we don't want to burden our loved ones if we feel pain or suffering, and it's quite difficult to like ask for help explicitly. And also for caregivers, it's almost assumed that if a loved one is sick, we will immediately step into the role of this caregiving role, and no questions asked, at the expense of our own like health. And we even feel guilty for kind of wanting to prioritize like our own health, mental or physical, in those circumstances. So that's another layer that we wanted to highlight through the film. We saw an opportunity there because the city, and she has two kids who are still in school, and she's also like she lives in a space where two elderly parents, Gary's parents. So yeah, it was really quite like many different layers in her story that we really felt that that really contributed to the integrity of the story. Yeah.
It's fascinating. Really interesting. Yiming, I want to turn it to you on that point, on this point of caregivers, because I think caregivers are often, in many cultures portrayed, either negatively or, building what Pei Ling said, kind of, really do bear the burden of caring for a loved one. And like in this case, we do see it's a really powerful love story. This young mother who's caring for her husband when he's diagnosed. So talk a little bit about the issue of caregiving, if you would, Yiming, and how you wanted to portray this issue, through Lady, through your film.
I think the film through City, we actually see many different aspects of her personality in caregiving. You see the love and the tireless devotion, kind of like sacrificing her time. So she had kind of like a weird schedule where she would sleep at like in the middle of like 3 a.m. She'll still be putting him to sleep, and then after that she'll do some chores and like in the middle of the night, like 12 a.m. And then after that she would finally have the time to tune into her own needs, and like maybe she'll watch her favorite TV show and things like that. So there was very little like space for herself. So having that sense of self being lost, it was quite it stood out a lot. Yeah, even things like going to the swimming pool and like exploring her own hobbies and finding me time, it was something that she wrestled a lot with. Like she would feel guilty, and also like, is it okay to take time for myself? So there's a lot of complexity when it comes to caregiving, you know, in putting your own needs versus your obligation and what you're expected to do. Yeah, Pelin, you want to add on to anything?
Mm-hmm. Pei-Ling, do you want to add to that just in terms of caregiving and how you want to portray that issue in this film?
No, I think just this one thing, maybe like we wanted this film to kind of get people to start asking questions, you know, about caregiving and whether, you know, sometimes we put caregivers on a pedestal, but we forget that like they're only human. So I think that's one of the main themes that we wanted to bring out, is to get people to start questioning, like, okay, are we looking out for our caregivers? You know, who's looking out for them if they are looking out for other people? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a big issue here in the United States for sure, because I mean, you know, particularly many folks, I mean, in my family and folks I've known who've been caregivers or are caregivers, you know, don't have the social safety net or support, right, to care for their own families. To your point, Pei-Ling, and don't have the, you know, government funding or support from society to do this work. So I'll turn it back to you. Well, either one of you, but maybe Ming, if you want to comment on just like that issue as well that we see in the film, of just the lengths to which folks go to obviously care for their loved ones, but you know, what role do you think society has to play to, you know, help caregivers or help people struggling with diseases like dementia?
I think there needs to be more kind of structured and also like informal support networks, because I think right now there are a few agencies that handle this issue, and maybe not hang on. So there are a few formal networks that you can actually turn to, but I think most of the time there's still a lot of stigma in our society. People don't want to reach out for help, and they kind of like want to keep it within the family, and they don't want to share so much. So I think having this openness to be willing to speak up would really help, and you know, just turning to maybe a neighbor, maybe a person in a shopping mall. They kind of like look out for your family, because I think in the film, like, Gary got lost, and I don't know, maybe in an ideal society when maybe more of the public could know about it and they kind of like step in. So actually Singapore, there's a number of like initiatives to kind of like build this like dementia awareness about dementia and support, but of course there can be more to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, much more to be done, I know, in many parts of the world. Pei-Ling, what are your thoughts on that in terms of what society's role is on these issues, supporting caregivers, supporting, you know, families and folks that are living with dementia and these types of really debilitating degenerative diseases? What can society do to help?
I think, I mean, it's also quite cultural, right? Like it's very nuanced. Like different cultures have different kind of lens that they view caregiving through. At least through, I think in Singapore, we're definitely talking more about, you know, the aspect of caregiving, therefore trying to lessen the stigma. But I think there still is this like overall like shame that, you know, there's something wrong with my family.
Right.
And people find it hard to even explicitly say it. Like even just like last week, I was having dinner with my mom, and she was telling me, she was like, oh, if I ever fall sick, I don't want to be taken care of because I don't want to be a burden. And I'm like, yeah, but like, you know, people want to take care of you.
Right.
So it's just this like general mindset that has been so ingrained, maybe in earlier generations, And now we're trying to like, shift that in current generations, but even talking about it. So I think it's going to take a while for like any cultural shift to even happen. But I think like what Ming said, we need to constantly, let people know, it's okay. It's not a burden. It's okay to talk about it. If you need help, like it's okay to ask for help. It's just very simple things, but people find it so hard to even like reach out sometimes.
Yeah, such a beautiful point. And no, I mean, I've heard the same thing from my own family about the guilt and like you said, the shame around even just asking for help. Such a great point. And hopefully everyone listening takes that to heart as well. I'm wondering on that point, I'll go to you, Ming. What's the response been from audiences as they've seen this around the world? Because it is obviously a very specific story, but what's so beautiful about specific stories is they're often very universal. So what has the response been to the film, and what have audiences said as they've reflected on their own families that have dealt with these issues?
Yeah, I think we showed the film to a couple of friends and some of our partners, people who kind of helped us with the film, and I think the response has been pretty overwhelmingly like positive, and it's really heartening to know that it kind of resonates with like every single one of them, young or old. I think some people say it was very moving. Some people said it made them grateful about their current situation. So it was a really diverse mix of perspectives, and of course people say it was educational as well, and also visually it was really cool because we had like a fair bit of like imaginative and animation sequences, which was really, really cool. So for like it's been really great, and we're excited to have more people watch it. Yeah.
Ming, what has the response been to you? And also just building on that, I'm curious if you want to talk at all about the structure of how you told the story, because Ming said the way in which you did it was also very creative. Maybe walk us through any thoughts you have on the choices you've made there.
Sure. So we kind of use two devices beyond like, live action footage. We use like this little dementia clock animation, and we have full animation sequences. And I mean, so we saw the dementia clock as like a motif to kind of like subtly separate the film into like chapters, where slowly, it's just to give like audiences a sense of time. And it's actually been it's inspired by the dementia clock test, where persons of dementia, when they get tested, they just have to draw a clock. And because it tests like your cognitive like abilities, whether be able to understand logic and all that kind of things. So the more they're unable to draw a clock, the graver the symptoms. So over the film, we designed like 4 different clocks that are obviously, that fail to resemble a clock as time passed, which we wanted to use to show the passing of time, and how it's just getting more serious, worse and worse. And the full animation sequences, we wanted something that was quite like a combination of like abstract and a literal retelling. And we wanted the colors to kind of be more bright as compared to the dreariness or the gravity of like the anecdotes that Siti was relating. Because Siti, as you know, like if you've seen from the film, like her personality is so vibrant, right? And she wears a heart on her sleeve, and we wanted to portray that through the colors, and we wanted to show that this her spirit still comes through even when the situation is dire. Siti still tries her best. She doesn't falter, and even if she does, it's okay, because that's fine. But we wanted the colors to kind of we wanted it to have style but also be real. That was our goal of the animations.
Yeah, it's beautifully done. It really has both. Ming, do you want to add to that in terms of what story choices you made here, and why you decided to tell the story in the ways that you did and what techniques you decided to use?
I think part of the context of that was also because I think I think there were unexpected events that happened during the film that kind of like changed the flow of the story. And we were also like racking our brains, how do we tell the story? And at that time, we didn't think of animation. So actually animation came in to kind of like fill some of the holes, because there were things like anecdotes from the past that we couldn't really tell. And we were thinking of how do we portray it in an engaging way. So that was that. And of course, to give voice to the very vibrant personality of City. Yeah. Oh, back to your earlier question about the common response, like a lot of people cried, like when they watched.
Okay.
I have friends telling us like you wrecked us, that kind of comment. So it was quite like we did not intend to, but yeah, that was the main thing that
I could see that. I could see that happening. It's definitely a powerful film, but that's a high compliment if you get people to have that reaction. Pei-Ling, I'll go to you, and then to both of you. Last question is, what is your hope in terms of the impact you want this film to have, or even your future projects? I mean, what are you hopeful about when it comes to this type of storytelling? What kind of impact are you looking to have through the stories you're telling? And Pei-Ling, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, my hope for the impact of the film is actually very like, it's not a big kind of dream, but I think because I feel that film, watching a film is a very personal experience, and everyone watching the same film can have vastly different takeaways. So all I want is like, if someone watches a film that either plants a seed, or it makes them think about their own things, or it shifts their perspective. So as long as there's like a shift, no matter how subtle it is, I think for me that's already an impact, because once you get people to start thinking and you start reflecting on their realities, for me that's already a win. And I think that's the power of storytelling, right? People ask, what's the point of film? You just entertain, you just watch a bunch of visuals on the screen, but they don't understand that like it's a long game. You watch a film and like it hits you in ways you don't even know, you didn't know you could even feel, and then it stays with you. So I think that's for me like the power of like what a film can do and what we hope to do. Yeah. And of course, like if change action comes after that, that's like a real bonus.
Yeah, but just that ability to shift thinking and maybe even behavior, which we have seen evidence of for sure through stories like this. Ming, I'll give you the last words. What kind of hopes do you have in terms of those kinds of impact you want to have?
For me, definitely it's more people to watch the film, and it kind of like we want people from all walks of life, people who might not normally tune into even like the film scene, right? The aunties and uncles who like going about their daily life, they would not even think about this issue. And like even the young, like for example, I have young siblings, so actually they kind of like heard about me talking and they also got exposed to it. So they are like really young, like 10 and 14, and school, medical students, and even frontline staff, elderly. So I definitely think this is a film that was worth sharing because it's so universal, as like all these universal topics of love, loss, grief, and definitely we hope to open doors, and we hope to open up conversations for people to start thinking and talking about this issue.
Yeah, I hope so. And this is such a powerful film. So glad you all made it and brought it to us. Again, the film is Lady. It's really a powerful documentary about, as you said, love, loss, caregiving, dementia, family. There's so much here that folks, I hope, will get a chance to see it if you haven't already. Again, our guest today, Director Pei-Ling and producer Ming. Thanks to you both for joining us. It was a really honor having you on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.